Hi, everyone watching us live. We are here today for our very first Build It Live Liticast, joined by Dov Slansky, our VP of Solution Engineering, and our special guest today is Ryan Cohn, our Salesforce Product Solution Specialist. Did I get that right?
Yes.
Salesforce Product Solution Specialist. We are broadcasting live currently on LinkedIn Live, YouTube Live, Facebook Live, and hello to those of you who are watching live on our website, litify.com/liticast. Today, we are going to be actually pulling up a development environment, a demo environment of Litify, and Ryan is going to be walking through how to build a few different things within the platform. This is going to be an engaging session. Dov is going to talk about the use cases and how we would attack different things within the platform using workflow rules, using process builders. We're going to build some reports and dashboards. And we're going to talk about how to use those. And we encourage everybody who's watching us live, whether you're a Litify customer or you're someone who is potentially looking at Litify, please go ahead and post in the comments any questions you have about the things that Ryan is building live, any comments, thoughts about how maybe we should be diving deeper or addressing certain things that we're not talking about directly. Like, very much, we encourage you to please just go ahead and post in the comments. And we will discuss those things live. So now I see we've already got a pretty big audience who's tuned in already today. This is great. Ryan, I think before we start with the actual building, why don't we just talk a little bit about what your role at Litify is?
Sure. It's changed a little bit over the times, but I play a middle role of working with both the product team of helping develop kind of new features within Litify and scope out some of those features, as well as actually now more so working with the professional services team, actually setting up new clients on the Litify platform, going through some of the custom configuration they might need to help completely kind of set up Litify to work with their specific business needs. One of the nice things about Litify, especially Litify on top of Salesforce, is there's a lot of configuration you can do. So I work kind of with the professional services team to help make sure that we're getting the client's business needs matched over as much as possible into Salesforce and Litify and helping set up anything kind of custom for them along the way.
Yeah, John, Ryan's building it live every day. We just happen to have a camera on him today.
I've known Ryan personally for, I think, almost 4 years now. Right, Ryan? Yeah. We've worked together at 2 companies prior to Litify, and I am absolutely aware firsthand of what he can do, and I'm really happy that he was able to join us here today, and we can talk through some of the different ways that you can leverage and customize the Litify platform to achieve a variety of different goals. So, Dov, we talked about a few different things that we wanted Ryan to walk through today. The first thing that I think we should look at is triggering an email alert through a workflow rule. So Ryan, if you want to fire up your screen and kind of get ready to walk through this, Dov, do you want to set the table and talk about some of the use cases for an automated email alert?
Yeah, I'll give a bit of a background, right? Because we were throwing around some technical terms there, and we'll give a bit of background as to what it is that we're actually discussing, right? So when we say email alert, I mean, that simple enough, right? That's actually sending someone an email. And the nice part about Litify is that you can basically trigger that email however you'd like. So a number of common use cases we get, and obviously a lot of these are part and parcel of Litify, but you can tweak them or add your own, right? So based on statuses, for example, we get a lot of our customers, particularly on the intake side, for example, that have, a series of steps that an intake goes through, different statuses, as they're working to qualify, screen, and sign that client up. The ability to trigger an email automatically is great, right? You can write an email template. So the email is dynamic. It pulls information from the system, clients' names, etc. And then based on some event taking place, typically filling out a field with some information, it causes that email to be sent out. So you can think of some scenarios where this helps, which is when a new intake is created, right? So upon creating a new intake, immediately send an email to that prospective client, thanking them for reaching out to the firm, letting them know you're going to be in touch with them soon. Another use case that is often useful is when you change status. So when you are reviewing an intake, right? You might need to take it internally for review, let the client know, and if it's under review for an extended period of time, call it more than a day, you can send additional emails with timers on them, right? To let them know that it's not that you've forgotten, it's that the intake is under review, and no one ever has to touch it. This is all simply triggered by working that intake in the system, changing the statuses as time goes by. These emails get sent out. That's really what we're discussing here today. And it's not just intakes, right? We can trigger this across the system. For example, think about when you're in the middle of litigation. We'll go all the way to the other end of the side, right? When you're in the middle of litigation, simply automatically notifying the client that you plan to file their case, right? You plan to put their case in suit. It's a milestone that clients want to know about. You don't have to necessarily proactively remember to let them know. You can simply, when you indicate that it's in suit inside of Litify, you can automatically fire an email to them. So it's a great, really lightweight way of sending information out, whether it could be internally, it could be to clients, prospects, and just keeping them up to date, information flowing to them. And it's one less thing that someone has to remember to actually do. And the nice part is that in a couple of minutes, Ryan will show you how to build it. It's really pretty simple to do.
Yep. And you talked about the use case of communicating externally to your clients, but there's also an internal use case, right? If you want to send an email to an employee at your firm when a case moves to a certain status or something else happens within a record within Litify, you can do that as well.
Sure. Notifying the litigation team that the case is going to move over to them, notifying, the finance department when you settle the case, for example, notifying the attorney when the client signed a release to settle their case, it's come back in. There's all sorts of information that in the given course of the case you're going to save. And when you enter that information into Litify, communication happens immediately.
All right, Ryan, I think we're going to kick it over to you. If you want to pull your screen up and talk us through the steps here.
Sure. So first things first is we got to get into the actual Salesforce setup. So how we do that, and of course now my computer's going to run a little bit slower on us now that everyone's watching.
The demo demons are out.
It'll let me go here. Yeah. I don't think my computer likes the hot air now. So if you go into the Salesforce setup, clicking on a little gear icon in the top right, you can go into setup. It takes us into this main page here. And this is kind of the main backend setup screen of Salesforce. So we already have some email templates and whatnot set up, but how you can get to them is Salesforce is kind of configured here and it's got some nice interfaces here for categories for all the different places to actually set up. And of course, it's not going to let me click on anything anymore. There we go. So here on email, this is kind of where we can manage our email templates themselves. They're under, it went away on me, I'm clicking too fast for it. There's email templates, classic email templates, and that's where you can kind of configure the actual text of your email. It'll allow you to merge in fields from whatever record you're on, so you can kind of have some more personalized experience with the actual record or with the email that the client gets. Things like the case type, the client's name, any kind of information like that is listed in there. So you can kind of completely customize it.
I was saying that's really useful because it allows you to personalize or make the email really specific. And again, not have to involve a person writing or editing that email. It's simply going to be dynamically configured for the use case that you want it for.
Correct. And you can see here, this is one of our kind of default new intake alerts that gets sent out whenever a new intake is created. This is more so meant for the internal notifications, but you can see here anything within these kind of curly brackets is what's called a merge field. That it'll pull in that owner first name from the intake record, and it'll dynamically populate it in there along with all these other fields down here. So this can be configured internal, external, pull the details from that actual record.
And for those of you that are watching, have never done this before, you don't have to know these field names. No. Ryan will show you there's an actual picker. You simply just choose the field name. You don't have to know it's Litify _PM _intake. None of that stuff. it's simply displayed. You just choose the field and it's copy and paste into the actual template.
Correct. So here's not the best looking one. This is an HTML itself, but you can see here from the little picker field, this will let you pick what object you want to merge from. You always have to make sure you're picking the right object that you're sending from. So you're actually pulling in the right field. So we're going to do this from the intake. So if we intake field there, it's actually going to give you a drop down list over here of all the different fields on the intake record itself. So if you wanted to put something else in here, say we wanted to show like kind of what the status of the case is, or this intake is, we can pull in the status field. It automatically puts it over here to this little copy field value already selected. So all you have to do is just copy, either right click and copy, or just you can use the shortcut copy key. And then wherever you want to put it within here, you can type in and put that. We're just going to, not going to be the prettiest, but we'll put it in here and we'll put in a new field here. Copy and paste, and what that'll be is that'll actually put in the status itself. It's kind of a good practice if you're just kind of laying out a list view of things. You might want to call out what this field is, because otherwise it's just going to show the status itself, and it's not going to actually label what that text is. So sometimes on here, I'll put, status, colon, and then that merge field, so it'll actually kind of populate, and you can actually read through it. And if you just hit save, it'll save that for you. And you can come back to this main template here. It loads on me. And you'll be able to see that it's actually got the new text in there and that it's now able to be used with that. So then here we go with our HTML preview. Once it loads, you'll be able to see, again, this is an HTML, so the formatting's a bit off, but you can see here it's got the new status in that field that we put in there. And that's what we can actually use to, that'll actually pull in the right information. So templates are pretty easy. Nice thing too is that you manage the template in one place. Any alerts that you're using that template, that are using that template, will all automatically use that new template once you start sending new alerts out. So it's kind of a central location to do it. You don't have to do it for each and every alert, as long as you're using the same template.
Yeah, and just a reminder, this is an admin setting, right? This is not something that a user really ever has to concern themselves with. In fact, Ryan, I think perhaps the last thing we do here will show how you can even add a template manually to like an intake or something. So you can get a sense that these are available to users like a user expects. It's either going to automatically get sent out, or they can choose a template that looks to them like it's complete. Users will never have to worry about this. This is simply an admin setting. Build it once, and it'll just run automatically. But let's get to the automation, right? That's the fun part here. Now that we have the text, the automation is really where the power comes in. What's going to trigger this to go out?
For sure. So that's what Salesforce has, this great little category called process automation. This is kind of where the any of the kind of backend what an admin would use to automate around in Salesforce, where all your kind of settings take place, with either easiest way to trigger email alerts is either with a process builder or with an actual workflow rule. Workflow rules are pretty straightforward. They're very easy to use, and they actually work great with using just email alerts. So we'll start there. And we'll just go to workflow rules here, and we're going to create a new workflow rule using our email alert here. Once it actually loads on me.
Yeah, and the nice part about workflow rules is they can be very simple sort of if-then statements. And they also support logic, right? Ands and ors.
Yep.
So you can get creative, right? In our status example that we're going through here, it could be simply if status equals some status, send the email out. But you can also add parameters are that if case type equals X and status equals Y, it gets one email, but in a different case type, it gets a second one, right? So you can add variations to the workflow rule. The templates remain the same. You can add all sorts of variations in the logic for when that rule actually gets triggered.
So you'll see here when we first click in, these are all the workflow rules we have. Litify comes out of the box with a few themselves. So we're just going to click here and click on new rule. We want to create a brand new process. And I promise you, this Salesforce runs far faster. Lovely Florida heat down here that my computer does not appreciate. So it's going a little bit slow. Yep, and turning off the AC out here so it's not humming in the mic as well. So
Yeah.
So first things first, we want to click on what object we want to work with.
He's nervous.
So we're going to work on an intake. So we want to send when an intake equals a certain status and some other criteria. So we click on the object there. What that's going to allow us to do is that's going to take us to the next screen where we can actually select and narrow down the criteria, like Dove was saying, of when do we want this workflow rule to actually fire. First thing first, we're going to name it here and send email on status change. We're going to say an email on status change. We'll make it very kind of simple. You have a couple different criteria to figure out when you want to run this. You can either have it run when the record is just created. So when there's a new record, it'll run, trigger right away, or typically use this other one, created in any time it's edited to meet the criteria. This effectively means that when we want to say and send on a certain status, we want to say when it's created and when it's a certain status, then send this email alert out. And as long as that status doesn't change, it's only going to send the email, this action, once, and it's not going to do it repeatedly.
Yeah, and that's important.
You always want to be careful because the middle one will do it every time it changes.
Yeah, and that's an important distinction on the admin side, right? There's a difference between, well, we don't have to get deep into it now, but if we're going to fire a rule every time an intake is edited, right, that's very different than saying every time it's edited so that the status equals something, right? Because if we're doing it on edit, that means every single time someone makes a change, takes a note, date, etc., we're going to evaluate this rule and potentially send this email out multiple times. Which sometimes you might want, but in the scenario we're talking about here, we only want to do this when the status has been adjusted sufficiently to meet the criteria. Therefore, we'll only send it once.
Correct. So we'll keep it here as anytime it meets this criteria, meaning it'll only get it sent it once. We're going to select that intake status field, and we're going to say it equals. And if it's a pick list field, meaning there's some defined options we can choose, Salesforce will give you this little kind of lookup icon you can use to figure out what those options are and let you pick specifically from there. You can type them out if you know them. It's always best to use the little picker here just because it'll make sure you get the exact same syntax every single time. So we're going to say we want to do it when this is under review. So we're going to select just under review and select insert selected. And you can see here, it just puts in that text in there. To Dove's case, we also want to put in here, we're going to put one extra criteria to say, not just when it's under review, but we want to also say when it's a certain case type. Where is case type? Might not be in here. It's listed down lower.
Yeah, Ryan, let's just do it on, for example, do it on, create a date or something, or leave it blank. Let's keep it simple. Let's leave it blank. The idea here is just to show you that, when you're looking at this stuff, and you can see how simple it is to create this. Intake status, we chose the field. We don't even have to know what it is. Like simply search or list equals, and we have choices there where it doesn't equal. You can run in the inverse equals under review. And so it's really simple. Now, once we hit save, that's it. I mean, now when we start playing with statuses, this workflow rule is going to get triggered.
Yep. So that's the criteria of when to trigger this. Now this next step here is what do we do when it's actually triggered? And this is where Salesforce really has a lot of potential here. We're just going to send an email alert, but you can do a lot more with this next step here.
I think Dove tripped over his camera
loads here. So this is now where you can go through and you can say, we're going to add a new workflow action, and we actually want to trigger a new email alert.
Sorry about that.
So we're going to click on new email alert here. Once that loads here.
And again, just to review this screen, you can see here rule criteria. I keep going over this because for an experienced admin like Ryan, he probably has actually done this in his sleep. But for someone who's newer to the platform, there's cues and steps all along the way to remind you of what it is that you're doing. It's really designed to be used by an admin or even a novice admin, someone who doesn't have years and years of building this, can get very, very comfortable doing this quickly. So there's description fields. Those little red lines tell you what's required. There's that little magnifying glass as a picker to help you get the right values. It's really designed to make this accessible so that it's not just the business users, right, the paralegals and the attorneys who use the system and get the benefit, but the admin should find it easy to manage the system. I think that's really a hallmark of what we've tried to accomplish here, is make this accessible to really anybody in a simple fashion.
Yep, for sure. So this is where you can actually pick the email template that we want to use. And so we're going to say for this one, we're just going to click on this one since we were just messing with it. New intake alert. So that's our email template to use. And now this is where we want to select who we want to send this to. If we want to send it to an internal user, we either can pick literally anyone that's an actual Salesforce, has a Salesforce user license. We also have the ability to pick some of these other options here, either the owner of the record, which would be here, the owner, or if we want to send it to a specific email field, which we'll say we want to send it to the client themselves. So we actually have a client would be listed, their email will be listed under here under the email field itself. So if we click on that and drag it over, it'll let it do the selected recipients here. Nice thing too is you can add multiple recipients here. So if you want to send it to the client as well as the owner, as well as whoever else, you can select several participants in there. You can also, if you don't have a specific field, we always want to like BCC someone else, you can hard code in an email address down here in these additional email area, and it'll send it to them always as well. So we'll hit then save on here.
And then, yeah, Ryan,
and then this will actually save.
Yeah, let's pause on this next screen here for a second before we kick it live. Just, I want you to just sort of walk through and review what we've done, because the next screen is going to be very helpful for everybody to see the results of what we've just built. Again, the system is designed to keep you centered and easy to digest what it is that you're in the middle of doing. So, I always find this screen to be incredibly helpful when I build one of these out as a last-minute review, as a check to make sure that this is, in fact, what I want, right? We have rule criteria, intake status equals under review. We know when we're evaluating the rule, and we can see the email alert that we've created right there. So this one screen, it's very easy for us to see that we've, in fact, created a rule. We're sending out an email, and all that's left now is kick it live.
Yeah, there's these three components,
so
right? You've got the rule with the criteria, the template, which is what you're saying, and then the alert that is triggered by the rule that sends the template.
Yep. So now you hit done, it means that everything we're done editing in it takes you out of the edit window. And now in here, the last step we want to do is actually to activate it. By default, these rules aren't active. You absolutely always have to enable them. So that way you can kind of do a lot of setup on the back end before actually making things live to make sure you kind of have everything and do a final review. So if we just hit this activate button here, that'll actually set this little active to true. And now we're going to have a working active workflow rule here that will send that email alert out whenever we have an intake that has a status change to under review.
Ryan, let's go to the intake here, actually. We don't necessarily have to show the email being fired, right? You don't see an email firing. It happens automatically. But I do want to highlight that the templates are also available in the UI, that a user on an intake, sure, this email template might get fired automatically, but they're also available to be sent manually. And it's really simple to do so right within the interface. You can grab any of the pre-written email templates. So you can mix and match a variety of manual and automatic actions for your staff. And again, this is really nice. And then when we get into process builders next, we can really show you kind of like some more advanced information, if you will.
For sure. Computer's going nice and slow today.
I'd be moving the same speed if I was in the Central Florida heat.
I think the heat index today is like right around 102, 103, something like that.
Not jealous.
Good opportunity to take a pause while we're waiting for Ryan's screen to load. Just remind our audience, please feel free to post in the comments. You have questions about any of the things that Ryan is doing here, or as we continue into process builders, reports, and dashboards, please feel free to post it in the comments, and we'll bring those up on the screen.
Man. I don't know if it makes sense for anyone else to maybe take over some of the screen share here. I don't know if anyone's...
It's all good. It's all good, Ryan. Let's, why don't we let's take a look at one other piece. Then we can sort of go back to the building. And I think it would be helpful to talk about two of the other tools that are available. I see we have a question that came in other than a status change. What can cause these triggers? The answer is any field. So any piece of data that you are putting into Litify can trigger something. So think about a field that you have. It could be a date, it could be a pick list to choose a status. It could even be text, because one of the parameters in a workflow rule is contains. So you can even look at a text field and look for a word that someone put in there and trigger based on that. So the answer is it's really, really flexible to pick up any field in the system and trigger some automation based on that field. Checkboxes, text, pick lists, dates, they're all fair game.
Yeah, that's really the power of the platform, right? Any piece of data within the system, you can report off of, automate off of, and include any of those bits of data within the email that you're sending out or the task that you're automating.
I see, Ryan, we went to flows next. Very cool. So we're going to sort of just take a quick detour and just show you sort of the other end of the spectrum from an automation perspective. This is, some more advanced automation. Workflow rules are really, really simple. Just to show you, I guess, sort of the depths of how far we can go without writing any code. Flow, which is what Ryan's just going to open up an example. We're not going to build one of these live. We'll build a process builder. I think we'll build that live, but just to show you the full gamut of what's available on the platform, a flow is capable of not just picking up a single field. It's capable, like you see here, it can capture information. It can walk you through a series of screens. It can present information to you. It can sort and filter that information, and it can make logic-based decisions, again, without writing a single line of code. Most software platforms, for something this complex, you'd have to bring in an engineer and write some code. Litify has that ability too, by the way. The code's called Apex, right? We can get there too. But without writing any code, we can still walk through what we're doing over here. And just to walk through some of these elements on the screen, Ryan, you can just maybe walk through really quickly just what this flow does, right? You could point to some of the elements. I don't want to get too deep into it, but I wanted to highlight the other end of the spectrum from a complexity standpoint, and then we'll go and build somewhere in the middle a process builder. But if you want to just take a couple of seconds and walk through what these colorful boxes mean, I think it'll help people understand the power of what we can do.
For sure. So the way I always describe flows is effectively they're what's called visual code, which means this is effectively code in the background, but Salesforce makes it very easy for you to actually work with. So this is a very simple, the use case here is being able to copy a billing address to a shipping address or vice versa. So this actually just walks you through of this first screen here is going to ask, which way do you want to copy? Do you want to go from billing to shipping or shipping to billing? And then these other steps here, you got what's called lookups, that these actually pull additional information in from the records themselves that we can work with within the flow. This decision step is actually going to let us decide what do we want to do. And it's actually based off of our answer on this first screen step here. From there, it's going to confirm and give us kind of a preview of what we're going to update on those records. We hit the next button on there, and this is what's called an assignment rule, which is actually going to start making changes. It's going to hold values in the back end of the system, very similar to how kind of some code and some development would. And then it's going to actually go over here to what's called an update record. And this is where the actual update to that record happens. And as final step here is kind of just a success saying, yep, everything worked out great. Your address has been copied over. So this is a very simple example of what can happen, but you can also do these flows that don't have these screens that kind of run in the background when you make a change, and will update record or update a collection of records and do a lot of kind of either very simple logic or really complex logic. And they're very simple to kind of walk through because everything is kind of like a flow chart. And so you can kind of follow the arrows as to what's going where. Actually really cool, and I love flows a lot.
Yeah, they're super powerful answer to a lot of questions in life is a flow. But that decision, I think, is what's important here, right? What this is allowing a user to do is to enter information, and then based on information, we can dynamically render a decision, right? A workflow rule is simpler. It's a simple if then or if or then. This is based on user input's decision, so it walks you through that process and choosing one to the other. It can go in either direction you want, right? So this flow works in two different ways. It's not simply copy from A to B. It's either A to B or B to A. So, and this is a simple example, but yet it's a powerful piece of visual code to let you accomplish something on the platform itself. Ryan, before we melt some people's brains melt their faces, I should say, with your flow building ability, because I have no doubt that we can. Why don't we step into a process builder? We can show another example of some, dynamic decision-based automation. Show up, I guess the next step up. We talked about a workflow rule and how that's an if-then statement, but we can go to a process builder that allows us to do a little bit deeper on the automation stack, take note of some other, things that are in your surroundings, and use those as factors in your automated decision.
For sure. And just to clarify that, Salesforce kind of has three different, what they call declarative ways of doing automation without using code. Workflow rules are kind of the bottom level. They're very simple, and they effectively let you work with just the one object that you're on. Process builders take it a step further, and a process builder lets you still trigger it off of one item, but one object, but it actually lets you then work with and pull information in from multiple objects, versus a workflow rule is only one object and you can only use data from one object. Process builder expands that to let you do a lot more than that single object, kind of whatever's related to that object. And then a flow takes it a step further and lets you kind of do whatever you want based off of the information you provide it. So that's where process builders, for the most part of what we do with Litify, when we start customizing things, we tend to always stick with process builders just because they're a lot more powerful and you can do a lot more with them.
Ryan, let's look at the notify users of new matter process.
Sure.
Dove, are these included in the platform out of the box?
Most of what we're looking at today is, Ryan, I believe this is a stock org we're working in over here. These are processes that are included with Litify. And again, the nice part is you can tweak them yourselves. You don't have to start from scratch. Even the managed stuff, you can clone or copy or edit them yourselves. So this one, I think, is sort of a good middle ground, and we'll explain what it is that this flow is doing. And the reason why this process, I should say, the reason why we have it in a process and not in code is because if we did it in code, the firm couldn't adjust it, right? But a firm here has the ability to adjust this. This one, and Ryan, I'll let you sort of explain what's going on here, and then we can talk about ways that we want to adjust it.
For sure. So this is kind of similar to that other flow screen we were looking at, that it's kind of a process chart driven, where you have what object you're working on. So we're working on the matter, and you have the ability to, same type of thing as our workflow rule, either trigger on just a new record. So always run whenever it's a new record, which this is set up to do, or when the record is created or edited. Same type of thing, edited, meaning if there's another, you change the status field on the matter later on, it'll trigger for that as well. And the next step here, this is kind of our decision steps. So these process builders kind of run top down. And so it's going to run from top and look here. And this is kind of our decision step. And this is where we set the criteria to say, we want something, these actions to run when this equals true. And for here, this is a dead simple one that's effectively when a matter is created, We just want it to go. So no criteria, just go into it and go into this action step over here. And this is where we can configure what we actually want to happen. So for this instance, we're sending a new matter email alert, and we're actually going to post the new matter notification to Chatter at the same time.
Perfect. So let's dive into some use cases here and explain sort of just what's going on. So like Ryan mentioned, this piece of automation is going to kick into play every time a matter is created. Okay. So in your firm, you sign a new client, you open a matter, this is going to fire. What's going to happen is we're saying is we don't need to vary this. We want it to fire. That's the just run step. We want this to fire every time a matter is created. Now, again, why we have this in a process is, let's say your firm says, you know what, I don't want to alert my staff every time a matter is created. I want to hold that someplace. You can vary that criteria in that just run step and say, okay, don't alert them immediately, alert them when it's created, but then something else has taken place, right? So you can adjust this. That's that just run step. And then the next step is, well, when I notify people, it's how am I notifying them? Well, I want to send an email. That's simple enough. Fire off an email again, going back to that email template where we started. Simply grab a pre-written email template and fire that off. Or I should say, and in this case, fire a Chatter post. And Chatter is an internal collaboration and communication tool within Litify. So we're simply going to put a comment in on Chatter. We're going to send an email to someone saying this matter has been created, go ahead and start working on it. And I think now, once we sort of explain what's happening, you can start to think about the different ways in which your firm might vary this process. It could be you don't fire the notification right away. It could be you don't send an email. It could be you want multiple emails to go out. There's even the ability, which we didn't touch in here, the next box is a scheduled action. You can even time delay this so that if a new matter gets opened on a Friday, right, it may not be helpful to tell someone about that matter. You want it in their inbox first thing Monday morning. You can put a time day on it that just delays the notification of this. So a lot of power in here in terms of how we do this. And sorry, and I talked over you before, but you went to that just run box. Let's take a look at that formula we can build and how we vary this, and just see how easily we can adjust the criteria.
For sure. Yeah, so Salesforce gives you a lot of three different options here. You can either do, this is a nicer picker that lets you actually select a field and looks very similar to how the workflow rules do, or you can do a formula, which lets you do a lot more complicated criteria. So you can really customize to narrow it down to run only when you want it to run. But here, this is the biggest value for having a process builder over a workflow rule, is using these field pickers here. It actually lets you expand far greater than just your one object itself. And of course, now I clicked it before and it popped up right away, and now it's going to take its time.
Yeah, so to explain,
but it'll effectively let you sit here.
Sorry, Ryan.
Yeah, it'll let you. This is going to do a pop up, and it's going to let us kind of pick all the fields on the actual object that we're on, so on the matter. And then anywhere there's a field that looks up to another object, meaning that there's a related record. Specifically, it'll actually let you traverse down into that other record. So best use case is we have a matter and we always have a client field that's effectively the client record that has all the client details on it. We can go down into that client record and use that as criteria as well. So we can say, for instance, if we wanted to, we have a matter that's working with a minor. We can do a check to say, I only want this email alert to go out if it's a certain matter and the client is a minor. And so we can actually traverse down and click on the client here, and it'll let us get into the fields on the client level, and we can select minor and only trigger it out to send there. So we're not restricted to just the one object we're working on. We can kind of do criteria a step or two further down as well.
Yep, and this is really, really, really important. And I think this is really where that power comes into play, which is we're looking at a matter, right? We're notifying, in this specific example, we're notifying people when a matter is created. But like Ryan mentioned, it could be that I want to notify, an attorney when that matter is open, but I need him to know that it's a minor, and I even want to put in, for example, the person's birth date. Now, on a matter, we're not storing someone's date of birth, right? That's on their party record. That's the person. That's their contact information. We don't store that necessarily on a matter, right? Because the matter is about the incident, not about the person. So, but this allows us to go through, find that, use it as a trigger, and even display that information. So it's really, really powerful here. John, I think someone had a question that you want to bring up.
Yep, absolutely. So we had a question here from Rodrigo. You showed a form-based workflow editor in Litify, and then you showed a flow builder. Are these separate plugin solutions, or are they just different views of the same feature? Dove, you want to take it?
Sure. The answer is neither. They are not really plugins. They're part and parcel of Litify. They are separate pieces of functionality. So a flow is different from a process builder, is different from a workflow, right? They're used for different purposes. And John, maybe on the back of this, we can refer everybody to Trailhead, right? Trailhead.com, and you can kind of see some skill-based learning you can take to learn this. But the answer is that they're different solutions as part of Litify. For different purposes. And therefore, they might achieve occasionally some of the same goals, right? In this case, we talked about sending emails. The end result might be the same, but the complexity or the path you take to get there is very different, and that's going to necessitate using a different tool.
Yep, and I think the way to think about this is there's really 4 different ways to achieve automation. Let me know if I'm missing one, Dove. 4 different ways to achieve automation within Litify, built in, no additional plugins, just out of the box power of Salesforce. You've got workflow rules, which are your simple, if this happens, then do this on a single object, right? Trigger an individual action. The second thing you have is a process builder, which is an advanced workflow rule that allows you, as Dove and Ryan were saying, to enable automation across multiple objects and with multiple steps. The third level is the flow, which is that flow builder that Ryan showed with the different colors that allows you to have multiple steps and conditions, cross objects, different types of actions. And then the most advanced would be actually within code by building what's called a trigger in Apex. And you can get extremely advanced there, obviously, because of code.
No, I think you got all of them, right? That's all the different ways to do it. And again, it's just these are all different tools in sort of the Litify admin's tool belt, depending on the scenarios, the one you're going to choose, right? No different from actual tools, right? Sometimes it's a drill, sometimes it's a hammer. It depends on the level of blunt force needed. But in this in this scenario, these are all the tools that you have at your disposal. And John, maybe we should wrap up. We'll talk a little about some of the training that's available online, and people can learn a little bit more about this at their own pace.
Yep, and it looks like we lost Ryan's video. As happens when we go live, we are at the mercy of our home Wi-Fi. So we do have a number of different resources available to our clients and to those who are interested in Litify. Our clients can always go to our training hub. It's training.litify.com. Litify Learning Hub has paths that allow you to walk through specific feature functionality and learn about the platform. For broad Salesforce-related training, which Litify is built on, for customers of Litify, or if you are not yet a customer of Litify, you can use, as Dove mentioned, Trailhead. Trailhead is a gamified learning path.
Yeah, John,
I love it.
I'll toss it up on my screen here so people can see while you talk what that looks like.
Excellent. So it is a gamified learning path that allows you to identify different products within the Salesforce ecosystem, different features within the core Salesforce platform, and to take these training modules actually within a Salesforce environment. So it spins up a sandbox environment where you're not going to touch your real data, and it will teach you how to do various things. In these modules that Dove is bringing up address very specific features, functionality, or processes within the system. And as you go into them, it will quiz you, it will give you videos to watch, and then it will give you tasks to do within this sandbox environment. and then verify that you actually did these things correctly. It will check that you've actually performed the task as intended within the modules. Various levels of expertise, beginner, intermediate, and advanced. So you can see the products listed there. They even have trails modules by role. So if you exist within a marketing function, or you exist within an IT function, you'll have specified paths for your function, for your role, for your level of expertise, and then for the specific products. As you can see here, there are over 700 different trails for you to go through and learn. Actually, going through Dove here, you see the certification maintenances that are tied to the different releases. There is a new release coming. I believe it's next week, the summer 20 release. The Salesforce platform does update automatically 3 times a year, in addition to the Litify updates that are happening, I believe at this point, it's on a monthly basis across our product set.
For the most part.
So you're getting updates all the time. And if you want to know more about the specific features, updates, and fixes within each of those 3 times a year releases, you can come to Trailhead and take a trail there as well.
Yeah, just to give you guys an example, right? Here's how you create those processes, and you can see here it's a 20-minute course in how to create a process, just like Ryan was showing us before. So this automation is right at your fingertips. So I think this is great, John.
Yeah. So we ran through today workflow rules. It looks like we got Ryan back here. We ran through workflow rules. We talked about flows. We talked about process builders. We wanted to get to reports and dashboards. We didn't have a chance today, but we had a pretty big audience for today's Liticast. So I think we're going to be doing another one of these in the future. We'll be sure to touch on reports and dashboards. But if you want to know a little bit more, I would say head over to Trailhead, head over to our Learning Hub, and you can learn how to do those things there. Or as always, reach out to us here, and we could absolutely show you those things. Coming up on Liticast tomorrow, we actually have a special episode. We're doing a marketing roundtable with some of the best legal marketing minds to celebrate the release of our law firm marketing guide, which will be coming out tomorrow. It'll be great. We've got Alyssa from Crisp joining us. We've got Guy Sakalakis joining us from Attorney Sync. We have Chris Dreyer from Rankings.io, Dave Thomas from Law Tigers. We've got Chris Princess from CAMG. We'll be doing a great roundtable discussion on how to market your firm, and that'll be accompanying the release of our legal marketing guide, which comes out tomorrow as well. So if you would like to get a copy of that guide before everyone else, we can get it to you today. You can just go to this link that I just put up on the screen here, and we will get you a copy of that guide, a hard copy, into your inbox. It's litify.com/marketing-pre-release. Thanks again for everybody who's watching us on whatever platform you're watching us on. Be sure to tune in tomorrow for our marketing roundtable. Dove, Ryan, any parting words before we sign off?
All good here. Thank you, John.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. We appreciate it. Glad your internet's working again now. And to everybody watching at home, thank you very much. And we'll see you tomorrow for another Liticast.
All right.